Now, surveys have revealed that there has been a gradual decline in public trust in British politicians across decades, and that's to the point where it's close to non-existent today. A recent poll suggesting that only 5% of Britons believe that politicians are working for public good rather than for themselves. The survey also suggests that faith in UK statesmen has dropped sharply since Boris Johnson took office as Prime Minister. The distrust is partly because of concerns over the UK struggling to re-establish its economic and diplomatic alliances after the Brexit. The government's handling of the COVID pandemic is another reason for the decline in public trust, and British politicians' involvement in an array of scandals is also being partly blamed. Johnson's government has been mired in sleaze claims after it tried to save Conservative MP Alwyn Patterson from suspension last month. Now, two people will be joining me now to discuss this a little bit. So we have Robert Carter, our correspondent in London. Also, I'm joined by Marcus Papadopoulos, historian and political analyst and author in London, too. Good to have you both on the show. Robert, so public trust, it's a really invaluable asset that looks like to have been lost in the UK. Tell us more about the reasons contributing to this.
Well, there is more than one scandal which has plagued the ruling Tory government over the past weeks. The latest one is, of course, talk about apparent parties that were taking place in number 10 Downing Street during the lockdown last year. So whilst everyone else was expected to stay at home and celebratory occasions such as Eid for Muslims, being able to go and pray in the mosque, even going to your own family member's home, for anyone, those were being restricted, whilst politicians basically had their own set of rules and were engaging in parties, mixing and so on, totally enjoying themselves while everyone else was struggling, it seems. That's just one of many. I think also what's affecting public trust in the ruling establishment as well is the fact that politicians are considered to be a bunch of liars, to be quite frank with you. That hasn't been helped by the fact that Brexit hasn't quite gone the way that many would have hoped. Many of the promises that Boris Johnson has been on record as saying he would commit to should Brexit be fulfilled and he became Prime Minister, many of those promises are not actually being fulfilled as they said that they were. So there is major issues which aren't being helped. And I think that another sign of growing distrust in the authorities is the quite large scale distrust of how the country is dealing with the COVID outbreak. I think that many people are surprised by just how many people as well don't trust the establishment. They don't trust the vaccine rollout. They don't trust what politicians are telling them about the outbreak. They don't trust the numbers that are being revealed. Some people don't even believe that there is such a thing as COVID. And I think that this has, by and large, been peddled by conspiracy theorists, but there are far too many what you might call ordinary voters which are believing those ideals and those comments more than what they're hearing from number 10 Downing Street. So it's a long line of things. The opposition as well are trying to capitalise on it now, particularly the Labour Party, which looks set to keep challenging Boris Johnson on his sleaze and scandals. But again, even opposition parties are not particularly well trusted, I believe, among large sections of the British electorate.
Okay. Now, let me ask Marcus Papadopoulos. Marcus, this distrust, as it is reported, and I just announced it in the intro, Boris Johnson has a big role in that. It's sharply declined after he took the helm as Prime Minister. Let's talk about how big an effect Boris Johnson has in this, and what could be the consequences of this loss of public trust among the Britons.
Well, I am a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery at Westminster, hence I have particular insight on this matter. And it is suffice to say that for many years now, I have argued that members of Parliament at Westminster constitute a microcosm of how British society as a whole has rapidly deteriorated and is continuing to deteriorate. Because the calibre of MPs across the House of Commons is atrociously low. It is particularly bad on the Labour benches, but as I said, it is pervasive It is particularly bad on the Conservative benches, and it is particularly bad on the Liberal Democrat benches. But as I said, when it comes to Labour MPs, it is even worse. So the intelligence levels of MPs is appallingly and shockingly low. The work ethic of MPs is disgraceful. The knowledge of Britain and the wider world of MPs is limited to Wikipedia. Their life experiences is almost confined to university. That is the core reason as to why there is very little trust amongst the British public in their elected representatives at Westminster. So let me give you some examples. We have one MP who feels it's totally appropriate to take her newly born baby into the House of Commons, into the chamber. We have other MPs who believe it is perfectly appropriate to wear trainers in the House of Commons. There is another MP who was recently convicted of threatening to throw acid in another person's face. And not so long ago, it was revealed that the son of one MP was charged and found guilty of being in possession of a Class A drug with the intention to sell this Class A drug. So it's not just about Boris Johnson. The standards in the House of Commons, in the chamber, have been deteriorating for the last 20 years or so. And I should add as well that the standards of the average Briton are no different to the standards of the average MP at Westminster, because the average Briton, instead of being interested in how civil liberties are being eroded in Britain under the cover of COVID-19, instead of being interested in how there are 14 million Britons living in poverty, how there are 4 million children living below the breadline, the average Briton is more interested in which celebrities are having extramarital affairs and which celebrities have had new teeth placed in their mouths. So the situation at Parliament is representative of the situation in Britain as a whole.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Robert Carter, our correspondent, and Marcus Papadopoulos, historian, political analyst, and author, joined us from London with their input and contribution. And thank you for watching this edition of the News Review.